Well, guys, we are back for another episode of the Liberal Asshole Show, episode 78. And you might hear thunderstorms in the background because it's storming really bad for me right now as it started up again. So be on the lookout for that possibly, and maybe me getting disconnected, which would not be fun. But anyways, what are today's topics?
Cornel West running for president. Xenophobic Quebec language law. Homophobes rage over a fish. Is meat safe for you? Fox News rages over furries. SJWs say voting rights and climate change stuff.
Alright, so what are we going to talk about first?
Well, the first one we'll be using will be Cornel West running for president.
Yeah, so this happened last week, and oh boy, a lot of things changed because it was going to be a simple one thing, but then it changed into a whole different thing. So anyways, Cornel West is an awesome progressive who's been working with Bernie's campaign the last two times he ran, and recently, just a week ago, he announced he was going to run for president. Of course, he wasn't going to be a Democrat, so he was going to run for third party. I was like, okay, whatever. And it turns out, though, the party he was going to run for was the People's Party. And we were wondering, like, what? Why would you do that? Now, of course, I didn't know pretty much anything about, like, the People's Party scandals that I've read up after he was announced.
I did. I knew. I knew about a lot of them, at least a lot of them. So yeah.
Their owner having a massive sexual assault allegations on him, which looks bad. Didn't know anything about that. But the big problem for me is when he first announces, why the People's Party? Because in order to run for president, you have to unfortunately go for the Electoral College, and you need 270 in order to get it. The People's Party is only valid in 3 states. That's not enough to mathematically get. If you want to run for third party, you run for the Green Party. They don't have all the states, but enough to mathematically get. So, like, why would you run for a party that has even less chance to win than the Green Party? That was the angle I was going at first before I found out about all the other stuff about it. But then, thankfully, we found out, because apparently it seems that Cornel just simply did not know about the stuff, just like I didn't. And now he abandoned the People's Party, now running as a Green candidate. Which makes much more sense.
Yep.
And definitely, other than Marianne Williamson, definitely the person I'd be voting for if he gets a nomination. Although, if he ran as a Democrat, you probably have a better chance at winning, which is the most important thing. But you do you if you want to run a third party. So yeah, we gotta see about all this. Him run for president, and then this whole scandal with the People's Party. And that was a big thunder in the background.
Well, considering how many scandals there have been, it's quite that was a massive lapse of judgment for Cornel West, but he found out what had happened about the scandals and at least course corrected. So
good on him.
I guess props on that, even if it's like not should
have known about that beforehand.
Yeah.
But hey, at least he's on the Green Party, and I'm sure that thunder in the background was loud enough to be on the mic, unfortunately. So yeah, that was really weird and strange, but hey, at least he's on the right side now, of course. Oh, that's right, another people criticized him for is that he was anointed the People's Party nominee, remember, instead of having like a primary and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now he's going to have to fight for it, which I don't even know if there's anyone else in the Green Party run, so maybe he has a chance and all that.
Yeah.
We'll get to wait and see on that. But yeah, glad he's running. If Marianne Williamson, who's the only progressive option right now, doesn't get the Democratic nomination, I'll probably be voting for him. Although his takes on the Russo-Ukraine war are extremely cringe, so it makes me have very hardcore second thoughts on voting for him just for that alone, because it's really, really bad.
Is he unintentionally? He's unintentionally pro-genocide, isn't he?
He wants to cut all aid to Ukraine completely.
Yep.
And all that.
Unintentional. Yep, useful idiot for those who support genociding the Nazi terror state of the Ukraine, as they would call it.
Yep.
Since most of the people who support Russia think that all Ukrainians are Nazis, and I actually, of course, I only remember
Danny Hyphon.
I remember with Harry, I briefly unblocked him to leave him a message and then block him again on Discord. And one of the recent ones I said was, at least if Russia genocides the Nazi terror state of the Ukraine, there'll be 44 million less Nazis in the world.
And so yeah, it's an existential threat to world safety that Ukraine must win this war. makes Russia look horrible, and humble them, hopefully pacify them like we did with Germany and Japan after World War II, and hopefully scares China from ever doing anything to Taiwan and anyone else in the area. So it's an existential threat to world peace if that Ukraine wins. So yeah, that alone could be enough to keep me from voting for you. Yeah. And unfortunately, could be a reason I vote for Biden maybe if I'm forced to. But thankfully, I'm in a deep blue state, so I don't have to make that choice if I want to.
Yeah, because like I said, with me, remember, Ukraine's also protecting Moldova and Georgia. If Ukraine goes down, Moldova's gone in a week. Moldova doesn't have a professional army, and they wouldn't stand a chance. They'd just get steamrolled. And Georgia, they'd turn around and Georgia would be next. Georgia would probably hold out for about 6 months to a year.
They got mountains
before going down.
They got the mountains protecting them.
Yep. The mountains would probably be, but once Russia breaches the mountains, that's it for Georgia.
All right, so I think that's enough about talking about Cornell. But hey, it's still nice that he's running all that. So now on to the next topic.
Xenophobic Quebec language law. What's going on here?
Oh man, I saw this like the day after we did the last episode, and it pissed me off so much. So recently, as I'm sure you know about Quebec, for all of you who don't know, it's a province in Canada, and it's the only majority French-speaking province in Canada, which the rest of it, I believe, is mostly English, and they're very rebellious. I'm sure if you didn't know, remember if they had two independence referendums in 1980 and 95, and in one in 1995 they lost by like less than 1% to become a country. So yeah, they're very, very like hardcore nationalistic, and to the point where they're getting like pretty xenophobic. So they actually passed a law recently that pretty much restricts a whole bunch of people that don't speak French from even doing anything in the country. Like, it's even worse than, like, the Ukrainian bill that we've covered over the years. Oh, God, this one really got me mad. And you'll see probably why, too.
This is a graph showing the percentage of French speakers in Quebec. Put simply, the language has been declining since 2000.
Yeah, guys, if you look at thing right here. In 1991, over 82% of Quebec spoke French. 2020, so 30 years later, it's down to less than 78%. So they're raging and mauding over a 4% drop in people that speak French. Such a big deal, am I right?
Yeah.
So what? So what if people don't speak French as much in Quebec anymore? So what? I would say the same thing if America didn't start speaking English less. I don't care. How is this an issue? Language doesn't mean the most important thing here.
Even if slowly. It's quite a hard thing to come to terms with. I mean, Quebec is the only province in Canada where the francophones make up the majority of the population. And for Quebecers, preserving the French language is the only possible safeguard for the survival of the Quebec identity and culture.
Language is not part of your identity and culture? What about all the Anglo-Canadians there in Quebec? What, you're saying they're not part of your culture because they don't speak French? That seems pretty xenophobic.
Apparently not.
I'm sure, I'm sure, as a fellow English speaker originally from the UK, I'm sure you would already see how rage-inducing this already is. Yeah, you know this would apply to us.
Where everything is dominated by English-speaking media, Quebec is trying to save their province from Anglicization. But to understand
what's wrong with people want to speak English? Like, what's the big deal? It's not. We're not forcing you to speak English. It's just, sorry, it's not our fault that English is the main language of commerce in the world because of America and the UK. It's not our fault. You just gotta deal with it or just ignore it. It's not a big deal.
We must first understand the way in which French initially survived. Canada was initially a French colony within the larger territory of New France after being claimed in 1535. But following the successful conquest of New France by British forces during the 7 Years' War, it became a part of the Kingdom of Great Britain.
Which helped begin the American Revolution
During
War.
All this, a period of violence and unrest was constant between the French-speaking population and the British, and continued during the American Revolution, with many of them siding with the Americans. All of this growing tension made the British fear that due to the proximity and already well-formed alliance, the Americans would help the inhabitants of New France rebel against British rule. So rather than engage in another costly war at the same time to try colonize them, Britain reluctantly passed the Quebec Act of 1774 to maintain peace, which allowed them to have French as their official language, use French law, and stay Catholic, or in other words, keep their culture. This rebelling against the English by preserving the French language really set the stage for everything we've seen since, and is still present today. Many laws, acts, and bills have been passed since in order to assure that the French language would remain alive and well in Quebec. During the Quiet Revolution of the 1960s, which was basically a period of intense socio-political and socio-cultural change in French Canada, Quebec created the French Language Office, which was a public institution responsible for the assurance of the correct usage of French and enrichment of the spoken and written language. In 1974,
this sounds as silly as the English-only movement in
Act
America.
was adopted, making French the sole official language of Quebec. But that wasn't enough though, so then came the Charter of the French Language, aka Bill 101 in 1977, requiring that French must be the language of legislation and the courts, administration, work, business.
Canada has laws that actually have English and French on like all commerce stuff, so I don't think that's really needed, and also dumb.
And education. Even in 2020, there was an amendment introduced to Bill 101 that stated that all government communications would be exclusively in French when communicating with other government bodies and companies. So fuck over all the non-French speakers in here in all that regard. Very, very nice. You'd think that Quebec would be able to protect the French language from decline, right? Well, it's not that simple. In fact, it hasn't really worked, besides slowing the decline of it. The proportion of Quebecers who only speak French as their primary official language fell from 83.7% in 2016 to 82.2% in 2021.
Oh, 2% drop in 5 years. Oh no, the end of the world.
The primary language increased from 12.
And English only went up 1%. It's only 13% of Quebec speaks English. Oh, boo-hoo.
13%.
That means the other half of that was other languages.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh, that's right.
Oh, no.
They are going to get to a xenophobic immigrant part, which you'll be hearing later on.
The English-speaking population has increased by 1.2 million, while the French-speaking population has increased by 120,000, 10 times less. Now, this is obviously scary news for Quebecers. So,
how is it scary? This sounds like far-right idiots in America that cry about the diversity change, the demographic change in America. This is literally no different than that. This is just racism. Like, get out of here! Xenophobic!
Same in Australia. We see that from time to time with those fucking far-right politicians.
Ugh, not a good showing, Air Canada. Ugh.
Nationalist Coalition Avenir Quebec, or CAQ for short, was re-elected in October of 2022 and gained a huge parliamentary majority on the premise that it would protect French as the dominant language in Quebec. As for how they plan to do this, well,
hello English-only movement?
Bill 96.
The French version?
Passed into law on June 1st, 2022, and set to roll out in the coming years. This is without a doubt the most comprehensive bill ever passed by the Quebec government. Cited as a language protection bill, Bill 96 is set to reshape many aspects of public life for Quebecers. The first part has to deal with immigration. See, declining birth rates among francophone Quebecers has been a key problem for quite some time.
You don't think us in America and the rest of the developed world don't have that problem? Japan too? It's just because we're developed. Simple as that. Nothing you can do about it. But hey, if you want the population to go up, you always got immigration, but of course, you gotta not be racist. But of course, you're trying to get that American spirit in you, apparently.
Less and less native Quebec people, you can't expect the language to be passed on to new generations as a first language they're most comfortable in. Even with immigrants coming to try and replenish these numbers, they're simultaneously contributing to the fall of French. More and more.
That's also kind of racist too, because you do know immigrants can, especially their kids, can assimilate to your culture and speak your language. Mayumi, good example, right off the bat.
He's a very good example.
And other people too, because that usually is what happens when, like, immigrants in America specifically, when they come here, their kids are much more likely to speak English than their parents and all that. It's not that big of a deal. And even if they didn't speak English or French or whatever, who cares?
Allophones, which in Canada are people.
Don't forget that my aunt came from Germany. And, her kids speak English. She speaks English.
I mean, 40% of Americans have German ancestry. It's the biggest ethnic group in America. Because German spread far, as we know.
Yep, and one of the bigger ones in. Hang on, I'm going to check something here.
You're saying German spread down under as well?
Oh yeah, South Australia has You go up into like Hahndorf and that, and there's a lot of Germans there.
English or French as a first language.
I just hope they didn't get the same treatment that our Green German Americans had in World War I. Pretty much the same thing they had to go through like here with Quebec.
To learn English rather than French.
Why do you think they're out there? Because they did.
25% of immigrants said English was their first official language spoken, up from 8.
Well, yes, that makes sense because English is the primary language of commerce. Why do you think it's the most spoken language in the world?
Yep.
To me, it's no surprise. If you want to do business like in America and the UK, the biggest economies in the world, you gotta speak English. It spreads far and wide.
18% in 2016. The trend was reversed on the French side, from 61 to 55% in the same amount of time. Quebec Premier François Legault has claimed that speaking French at home is key to preserving the French language, and it's been calculated that 55% needs to be closer to 90% in order to maintain the linguistic balance in the province. Now, the answer to this problem possibly lies in new immigration restrictions, part of Bill 96.
Immigration restrictions to protect language
about 50
people.
to 60% of economic immigrants who selected
Gee, where
to
have we
immigrate
heard
to
that
Quebec.
before? Every racist policy ever?
America? I didn't know America was in Canada now. Ugh.
Spoke French,
Germany,
but now it's been up to 60% of economic immigrants who selected to immigrate to Quebec.
This sounds even more hardcore than Japan even. They're very anti-immigrant.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Spoke
That's
French,
saying
but now
something
it's been
because
up
it's
to a
Japan.
minimum percentage of
As they're one of the three countries in the world that are true ethno-states.
80%,
Yep.
with the ultimate
What
goal
the
of
other
having an
Both Koreas.
Oh, of course.
intake of 100%
Of course it'd be
French-speaking
both.
immigrants by
Of course
2020.
it'd be both Koreas.
Yep, they're the three only countries in the world that are racially, ethnically, and nationally all pretty much exactly the same, like 90+%.
6. In the
Wow.
meantime, if you're one of those non-French speaking immigrants, it's quite tough. Upon arrival in Quebec, immigrants are allowed to receive services in English for up to 6 months. The refusal or inability to communicate in French a mere 6 months after arrival will result in the halting of all services unless it's extremely important to your health.
So if you don't speak French, no services for you. See ya.
Yep.
You do know learning a language is not that simple, right?
No, it's definitely.
Yeah. Just this is no different than when the English only movement want to try and make English the official language in America. I know we're biased probably because we speak English, so to us it's very simple, but guess what? Everyone else who speaks other languages, they think the same thing. It's not easy to learn any language.
My disability support worker's originally from Nigeria, and it shows at points. You can tell that English is his second language.
Yeah.
And you can tell when he's writing at points. So there are a couple others I've got on Discord. One's Ukrainian, and I've got a Indonesian friend on Tumblr, and you can definitely tell English is their second language.
Yeah, it's not that simple. Like me, I'm a weeb. I'd like to try and learn Japanese, but guess what? I've been trying for years. I have probably the most basic ways to speak Japanese. But that probably wouldn't get me far, and definitely isn't fluent. It's not that simple. And guess what? You try and get these people to speak French is also not going to be easy. So maybe instead of being xenophobic cunts about it, how about being more compassionate about it?
The use of any other language is forbidden past that 6-month mark, which, to say the least, is very intense. Luckily though, there's also been a proposition to create a one-stop service center for learning French, Francization Quebec, combining services which are currently spread across multiple ministries. The goal of this is to offer convenient language services and resources to newcomers in order to help them integrate and ultimately streamline the immigration process.
Why not just have that and not the ban and stuff? How about that? That seems very reasonable. And also, I don't know if it's mentioned yet or we just pass it, but I think they also have it. Oh no, I think it's later on because it involves colleges.
But the message is clear. The government is now prioritizing the revitalization of the French language at all costs. This is just one aspect of Bill 96.2. In the courts and justice system, judges will no longer be required to know any other specific language other than French. While Quebecers will always have the right to seek justice in the courts in either English or French, the reality of how common it will be to have a bilingual judge going forward has now been called into question. When it comes to the government...
And that thing... Oh no, I think it was for immigrants, but it showed on that thing like 16% of immigrants in the Quebec like 16% of them were bilingual English and French.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a lot of Quebecs that are English and French speakers. Ugh, so stupid.
Elected politicians and ministers will not be required to have any knowledge of English either. In terms of business, while companies providing goods and services with 50 or more employees are already required to serve their clients in French, the threshold has now been lowered to a minimum of 25 employees. So as to make sure small businesses are doing it as well, being required to go through...
Well, like I said earlier, Canada has it where every like good and product has to have English and French on like their products and stuff like that.
Yep.
Like
Yep,
I've gotten
more of that.
like I think one of the Pokemon Switch games I got used last Christmas. I think one of them came from Canada because they have both English and French all over the place on it. So yeah, like anything you get from Canada required to have English and French on the titles and everything.
French certification process verifying that all internal and external communications are in French. Business contracts must be drawn up in French, and if there are versions of a contract in two languages, the French will take priority if there is a discrepancy. A company's pleadings in court will also obviously have to be in French, or translated into French too. In terms of education reform, it's also a bit wild. For students in elementary or high school, Bill 96 is putting a 3-year cap on the number of years children of foreign temporary workers or foreign students can attend school in English. For students of college age, the total number of them allowed in English language colleges as a proportion of overall students can't be higher than the year before.
So that means they're not going to let people come in to learn English in universities. They're going to make it less and less and less and force them to speak French. This is just racism and xenophobia. Which, of course, offends us because we're pretty... Well, I don't know about hardcore, like, Anglo, since... Sure, we have probably a lot of German in us, since there's a lot of Germans in America and Australia. But English speakers, yeah, this pisses off. This is no different than the English-only movement in America. And they're both racist as shit.
And will also be capped at 17.5% of the total provincial college population.
Guys, all you that, like, support the English-only movement, this is how you sound to us. Like, how would you, like, go into Quebec... to like learn stuff like that? Oh, now you can't speak English. Now you gotta learn to speak French. And then now you're gonna know how it feels to non-English speakers in America with your racist movement.
Access to English language programs in French colleges will be reduced too.
English language classes in university are gonna be lower too.
Wow.
Yeah, because you know language is part of like curriculum in like university and stuff like that.
The mandatory French language exams that students must pass in order to graduate from French colleges will also be extended to francophones and allophones studying.
And they're requiring you to speak English to graduate and stuff. This is wild
English
and
colleges.
disgusting.
The new law says that a student who doesn't have the speaking and writing knowledge of French required by the government can't get a diploma. So this means whether or not you studied at an English or French university, you'll need to take a French exam, and if you fail, you can't graduate. The last part of the
bill right there, people. You don't speak English, you don't speak French, you don't get to graduate.
The French Language Office of the past was renamed to the Quebec Board of the French Language, or OQLF for short.
It has begun acting surprise.
You guys, our nationalism is too extreme and it must be fixed. You pretty much lose any sympathy I would have for you, so maybe I'm just glad that you're suffering and still be part of Canada. Because you're student minority in Canada, so deal with it.
Almost like a language police ever since. If Quebecers think their right as customers to be informed and served in French isn't met, they can send a complaint to the OQLF to get things sorted. As for if it works, let's see it met. If Quebecers think their right as customers to be informed and served in French isn't met, they can send a complaint to the OQLF to get things sorted.
So you're allowed to complain if a business you go to doesn't speak French to you?
Wow.
I don't even think I don't think the 10% Spanish speakers in America will go that far.
No.
Yeah, so you're gonna force non-French speaking businesses to speak French if they don't want to, because you know learning a new language is not simple.
As for if it works, let's see. In 2013, they told off an Italian restaurant for having too much Italian on its menu when French should be the predominant language. In 2015, they forced a hospital in Gasp to take down bilingual signposts they had up, even though...
But, oh my god. They've had laws that force hospitals to take down bilingual signs. Very smart. Wow. Very, 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 very smart, don't you know? I mean, it's not like there's non-French speakers that need to go to hospitals, stuff like that when something bad happens. Oh, wait a minute. Oh my dear God. God, like, freaking hospital is down in Berlin freaking has bilingual signs out there for crying out loud. It's not a big fucking deal.
Now a sizable English-speaking population live in the region. The OQLF has even demanded that small stickers on restaurant windows that say stuff like "recommended by TripAdvisor" be taken down since it's not in French. Really, this...
Forced to take down TripAdvisor signs because it's not in French. Even though that could actually maybe help English speakers. Or non-French speakers. I feel bad for all you English speakers in Quebec right now. You're dealing with so much racism.
Countless examples, and Bill 96 basically gives them more power. They have newfound jurisdiction to inspect workplaces and seize materials at will without a warrant if they suspect English is being used.
What? They can seize assets from business if they're not in French!
Yeah!
Guys, this is like pretty much like Nazi Germany shit for crying out loud!
Yeah!
In based Canada! Oh my god! How is this? Oh my god, I remember having a meltdown in the comments of this video and people were defending it. And a whole bunch of people were speaking French to me like, you do know I'm not going to understand what you're saying, so what's the point?
It's now easier to make complaints if you feel your right to communication in French was violated. Complaints can now be...
How about the English speakers or non-French speakers? Their rights are being completely violated!
The Office of the French Language may seem like a rampaging institution of linguistic extremism.
This is
some,
English
but to others,
only
it's a
movement
strong
in
protector of an
extreme!
important culture. You need to remember that Quebec is a province that's basically surrounded by over 350 million speakers of another language.
Oh wow! I don't care if Quebec's surrounded by 350 million English speakers. It's not a big fucking deal.
I didn't care. I don't care either.
Good for you. You speak French. Don't force it on others who don't want to speak French. It's not simple. Likewise, same thing goes for the English-only movement in America that wants to try and force everyone to speak English. Not everyone can just speak English. It's not simple about that. It would make their lives easier if they spoke or understood English, but it's not that simple, so stop being cunts about it.
Language either. It's English, the most powerful and global one out there. So these drastic measures sort of make sense. But of course, this bill hasn't been without controversy.
They never make sense!
Restrictive language requirements, and strict enforcement methods, the bill actually allows provincial legislators to override sections of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedom, which is basically like Canada's version of America's Bill of Rights. So those who feel their rights are infringed upon will not be able to use the overridden articles of the Charter to defend themselves. As a result, the bill has been...
Can't even do like constitutional tests on that apparently now too. So a law that oversees Canada's like Bill of Rights in their constitution. That's even more extreme than America.
Heavily. Executives
and that's saying something. Holy shit!
Signed a letter to Legault warning the Premier the law is threatening to do enormous damage to the province's economy because it creates an unpredictable...
That is an understatement!
This legislation revokes the right to access services in English for some 300,000 to 500,000 English-speaking Quebecers. And
we may be in a minority in Quebec, but that doesn't mean our rights to be denied and all that. How about if people want to speak English or do business in English, you just let them and go fuck right off.
It will only make the province unappealing for people in sectors where talent is hard to find. Quebec business owners argue Anglicization is inevitable to some extent due to the internet and internationalism of the modern world.
And you know what? Maybe that would. Maybe that will happen in the future where the majority of Quebec speaks English. Guess what? That doesn't matter. Your Quebec culture and traditions and all that can still be done in English, just like the Anglo-Quebecs in your area, in your province.
Yep.
It's not a big deal. Just like how Spanish speakers in America can still partake in our traditions in other places too.
Exactly.
Jesus fucking Christ. The funny thing is, all this is just encouraging the opposite of multiculturalism. This is encouraging ghettoization. Now, I don't know if we talked about this before, but like the right has a meltdown over multiculturalism and that it doesn't work in Europe and stuff like that. Well, a big reason why is it does work in America because in America you're expected to assimilate, and we mostly, although the right don't, treat you with like respect and all that, and eventually you'll just learn to accept our customs, hopefully, and stuff like that. And of course, like as the stats show, with immigrants, when they have kids here, they're more likely to speak English and assimilate. It's not that big of a deal. Whereas in Europe, they ghettoize you. They pretty much make you live in areas where you're surrounded by people that already like speak your language, stuff like that. So it doesn't encourage you to speak the country's language and all that stuff. Now that happens in America too. Like, I'm sure just like down there too, you probably have like Chinatowns or Asian towns, stuff like that. Oh my God, they were all over the place in Maryland.
Yep,
Man,
we've got a Chinatown in Adelaide. And been there in a while. I should probably go and take a look again.
And yeah, sometimes there are people there that won't speak English, but a good majority of them will. Like they're gonna speak English. They're gonna simulate somewhat to you can at least talk to them. That's how all minorities would be. And you know what? I'm sure a good chunk of English speakers in Quebec, the minority of them, probably still also speak French in some regard to at least talk to people, basically. Like, you don't need to have these laws that fuck them over to try and protect your language as a racist dog whistle.
And it's inevitable if they are to run their operations efficiently. Meanwhile, indigenous groups...
Yeah, if these businesses want to run efficiently, if they speak English, you gotta let them speak English. And do stuff in English. Because trying to force them to do stuff in a different language is not simple and makes it inefficient, which, hey, it goes against capitalism. Being the most efficient and profitable as possible, remember?
Groups have also demanded an exemption from the bill, citing the need for indigenous nations to...
Oh yeah, that's right! This also fucks over Native Americans that would be in Quebec too. Because their languages, of course, are never respected as we know throughout history.
Have the freedom to hire whoever they desire, regardless of their first language, in order to fill human resource needs in their respective territories. In the end, the Quebec government wants to protect the French language at any cost. And, I mean, the people of Quebec overwhelmingly voted for this government. So
because they're xenophobic cunts.
It's not like it's a foreign concept either.
Exactly.
We always want to
protect and I'm glad
you
can keep suffering and still be part of Canada where you're the minority, so keep suffering. How about that? Hope it makes you miserable that your independence movement failed twice. And then you can deal with us Anglophobes all the time, since you're such a racist sacks of shit. So yeah, what do you guys say about this absolutely disgusting law?
Absolutely horrific.
Ugh.
Absolutely horrific.
And the fact that people defend this too is pretty bad. Oh yeah, there was my comment too from 2 weeks ago. This is disgusting, xenophobic, and my only comment, literally someone speaking French. Dude, if you want me to reply to you, translate it. I can't reply to you if I don't know what you're saying.
Ugh. Like,
oh my! Oh no!
Mate, you're writing all in French. I only speak English, and Google Translate is shit.
And why should I have? And why should I have to go? And also, why should I have to go through all that work to translate it?
Exactly.
You should know I'm an English speaker, so translate in English. But this is some severe form of cuckoldery. Someone underneath me. As an Anglo-Canadian, I'm fine with what Quebec's doing.
Wow.
that is some hardcore cucking right there. Oh my goodness.
Do you watch your wife get fucked?
Oh my god, this is so sad.
Yep, it absolutely is.
So yeah. Fuck Quebec's language wall. Deal with it. If people don't want to speak English, don't want to speak French, that's a you problem, not mine, and not the rest of the English speakers there. Deal with us. Oh my gosh. Literally Canada's English-only movement. And if anything, they might even be more racist than even the English-only movement. I don't think they would straight up ban people from graduating if they don't speak English down here. That's even probably too extreme for them.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Maybe we found an actual Nazi problem in Canada.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that was pretty bad. Alright, so now, what is the next topic?
That will be homophobes rage over a fish.
Oh my god, the stupidity continues. So, of course, conservatives crying and moaning about things getting too woke. And this is because we've covered over the last few months about how, like, they're crying about, like, businesses going woke and being supportive of trans and all that. But now, they're raging and moaning about a library talking about a fish that can change sex. Because, that actually is a thing that happens. But apparently,
I'm aware of that.
That's so evil. So, yeah, let's watch this.
So even if you've been living under a rock lately, I'm sure that it has been nearly impossible to not notice the sheer level of vitriol when it comes to any and everything related to LGBTQ+. And just to kind of show you how bad it is, many large multinational corporations are choosing to not cash in on rainbow capitalism as they usually do. As Anti-Fascist Turtle points out, as much as I hate rainbow capitalism, it's honestly a scary reminder of the times ahead that companies don't find us profitable enough to do their usual pandering bullshit anymore. And I agree with that, right? I never...
Which actually doesn't make sense because it is pro-capitalism to be pro-trans rights. So they're actually fucking themselves over in that regard. Instead of going for that one extra penny like I've been joking about in this series.
Stated that these corporations were our friends because they don't really care about anything other than profit. But this really is a pretty troubling sign. And this is all happening in part because of fierce opposition by organized fascists like Matt Walsh, who tweeted back in May, the goal is to make Pride toxic for brands. If they decide to shove this garbage in our face, they should know that they'll pay a price.
Garbage?
It won't be worth whatever they think they'll gain. First Bud Light and now Target. Our campaign is making progress. Let's keep it going. And as loathsome as that...
No, Walsh, your campaign is not working and you're trash, so...
individual is, you cannot deny the success of this campaign. I mean, we have been systematically out-organized by fascists in every conceivable way.
Really, Mike? I see them making a fool of themselves every day. What are you talking about?
Taking hold, as frightening as that sounds. For example, LOL Overruled on Twitter shared this screenshot of a blue check user responding to another blue check user.
Oh no! It's the crazy...
Oh, wow.
It's Lauren Lewinsky or whatever her fucking name is. The red ice bitch. There we go. Showing a tweet burning the rainbow flag.
Pride flag. And they stated, as if it were a matter of fact, that a majority of trans people are attracted to kids. Now, this idea is being reinforced online with photoshopped images like this, attempting to pedo jacket this random gay man. And all...
They literally... did a picture. I mean, they took a picture of an old man at a Pride wearing an all-white outfit, and then they photoshopped a picture of a artwork on it saying trans kids are sexy.
Wow.
Yeah, that's no surprise. Transphobes, when they have nothing else to say, gotta Photoshop and lie about it. No surprise.
Images like this attempting to pedo jacket this random gay man. And also tweets from accounts posing as allies have been gaining a lot of attention, like this one where somebody pretends as if MAPS are part of the LGBTQ community. And for those of you who are unaware, MAPS is an acronym for pedophiles that stands for minor attracted person. They are not part of the LGBTQ plus community, and this is a lie right here. And I think that most people know that this whole gays or pedophiles smear is just a smear. But I mean, you can't not notice how loud the bigots have gotten. And on the very first day of Pride, MAPS was trending on Twitter.
They make a fool of themselves, so they are loud.
Unassuming users to think that the LGBTQ plus community is supportive or inclusive of pedophiles, if not just pedophiles themselves. And I think that, for the most part, this idea that gay men are pedophiles has been largely disproven by the majority of people. But if they can think that trans people are pedophiles or a danger to children, then that's what they're going to try to push as well. But I mean,
it's not working.
I've been alluding to here, the pedo jacketing of LGBTQ plus people. It's not.
The majority of Americans are still pro-trans rights, so they're not transphobes like the rest of you pieces of shits are.
Not a new phenomenon, but the last time it was probably this persistent was back in the 70s or 80s, just to kind of show you how bad it's gotten. But basically, by telling you all of this, I just want to establish how hypersensitive bigots are, this Pride in particular. But the story
I would like to see a bigot that isn't hypersensitive, but that's quite an impossible challenge.
About the focus of this video, I think it really shows you how bad and quite frankly fucking dumb things have gotten when it comes to LGBTQ plus discourse, because something completely innocuous is now the subject of rage. But for once, the stupidity isn't originating from America. So this is what British transphobes are outraged about.
Turf
now,
Island, I see.
You're probably confused because I am literally showing you a picture of a fish, and you would be right to be confused because why would transphobes be outraged over a fucking fish. Well, my friends, this isn't
is meat safe for you video yet. We gotta wait then to get to the fish part, guys.
It's not just any old fish. This is an LGBTQ plus fish. You are looking at the Maori wrasse, otherwise known as the humphead wrasse.
Really, Mike?
And it's called that because of the bump on its head. But this fish is apparently trans as hell. And the British Library tweeted a photograph of this fish in celebration of Pride Month, adding, "Its wondrous forehead isn't the most magnificent thing about this fish. They are protogynous hermaphrodites, which means the females can later change sex to become males." They go on to explain here that Maori wrasse take about 5 to 7 years to become sexually mature, and around their 9th birthday, the females can change sex and become super males. An even more prominent hump and even brighter color, blue and green, which makes them super attractive to females. Ooh la la. Scientists are still learning about the factors that cause this transition, but fish typically change sex to fill a niche in their environment. A female wrasse named Sina at the National Aquarium transformed into super male upon the passing of a male named Tang. Finally, they add, "Fish sex is wildly inventive. Clownfish are protandrous hermaphrodites, male to female. Coral gobies change sex repeatedly. Freshwater mangrove killifish reproduce by self-fertilization. All female Amazon mollies mate with males of other species but completely disregard their sperm." So my friend.
So yeah, guys, this is actually kind of a common thing in animals. There are some animals that can change their sex and stuff depending on their environment. Self-fertilization too. And stuff. Like this.
A lot of lizards can do that.
Yeah, I was about to bring out too. Like I mentioned Jurassic Park earlier, because that's what happened in the series. They bred the dinosaurs to be all female, but they used frog DNA to cover up the gaps in the DNA that they didn't have, and it turns out they used frogs that were able to change their sex, so they were able to breed. Oof, not big brain on their part, but yeah, there are species of like fish and lizards that can, and I think even maybe some insects too, can change their sex on a whim like that. But see, these people are too, I guess, human-centric and think, if you're male, if you're born male, you're only male. If you're female, you're only male. The vast majority of animals are.
You're either male or you're political.
Yep.
They're also, because a lot of these people are also that type of person too.
Yep, because women are inferior, don't you know?
Yep, that's what they think.
But
because they're misogynist, racist. Every negative-ist in the book comes in to linking back to it because that's just kind of who they are.
But yeah, most species are whatever they're born as they are, but some species are not that, and this is what this British Library was explaining. But the right cannot have basic facts explained to them.
Nope.
This fish and its existence is an outrage to conservatives in the UK because it is very, very trans. And that post was basically the British Library's nerdy way of saying, hey, transitioning is a phenomenon that also occurs in nature in the same way that homosexuality has been documented in hundreds of species. I think that the number is over 450 off the top of my head. But conservatives, of course, were not happy about this fact because when feelings
never
are
happy?
more
I'm not
important
surprised.
than facts, you lash out when facts are shared, even if they're pretty entertaining and pretty cool to learn. But they were very mad, as Dem explains. If there's one thing a certain subsect of British people loves, it's getting big mad about completely innocuous mentions of anything having to do with gender. For example, today, hundreds of transphobes got their knickers in a twist, this is a very British thing to say, over a Twitter thread about a literal species of fish to the point where the British Library deleted the entire thread.
Why do you cave into these people? Why? Why do you cave to the fact? Come on!
Because it's fucking... Because it's, because they can't, because they hate it.
This is even corporations, so I can't even do the capitalism argument. You're a library stating facts. Stop caving to these Karens. Tell them to go fuck off and deal with it.
Jesus Christ.
Oh my God.
They'll still shoot you up eventually.
Yeah.
They'll still eventually shoot you up because you exist. They don't like books. They don't like learning. They want everyone, they want all the boys to be stupid, violent,
and
savages.
Women to submissive.
Submissive in the being naked and getting raped constantly.
Well,
probably the girls.
Naked apron, like in anime style.
Oh yeah.
But yeah,
and probably I'm encouraging the boys to abuse the girls as well. Like their dads.
Well, the far right nutcase in America do that, as we know. Ugh.
Yep.
Well, yeah. Tell these Karens to stop promoting the turf island that you're on and go fuck off with J.K. Rowling somewhere else.
Month thread to celebrate the fact that biological sex is a beautifully varied thing across species, and that a static dimorphic sex binary is not actually a default or natural state. In fact, that's not even true for humans, but the library got totally ratioed by transphobes. One person, totally missing the point, replied, "Are you saying gay men are actually women because fish?" Another person wrote, "Pride Month is also a celebration of hermaphroditic fish." And you know what? We'll claim that. These people are absolutely the most unreasonable beings in the existence of our species. Can you imagine
everyone in the entire auditorium face palming
for a second that there was a library that tweeted about how some fish are conservative or some fish are transphobic. They go around and they bully the trans fish.
By eating them.
Would that fact about fish make you apoplectic? No, because you are a normal person. But these conservatives threw a fit and ratioed the library for merely stating a fact about this fucking fish.
Yep.
Just wait until they
Karen
find
level
out
energy
about
again.
rainbow trout. Because according to conservatives, the near presence of rainbows around kids is deeply problematic. Ben Shapiro tweeted out angrily about a bunch of kids marching down a hall
Benny Boy raging over nothing again? Well, what else is new?
If you followed their logic to its conclusion, rainbow trout, I guess, are also pushing an agenda. Why are these fish trying to make our kids gay? It's just... The discourse is
fish
toxic,
don't even have
but
that
also
comprehension.
Very, very stupid. But getting back to the Brits,
again, it's humanocentric. So
I mean, there are like we always make fun of like animals for being stupid and stuff. Animals are actually very smart. Especially some animals are really, really, really smart.
Octopus.
Like dolphins, octopus. Those are some of the most smartest animals in the ocean. They're very, very intelligent.
Yep.
But they're not. But even they're not going to think about stuff like this because this is human-centric crap. They don't think about stuff like this. They just go along with their instincts.
Congratulations, I guess, for becoming as snowflakey as American bigots. I mean, it was difficult probably to step below the very low we set for stupidity here in the States.
And that's why I say, you guys are the America of Europe, and that's not a good thing.
But you did it, you fucking wankas. So that probably sounded more Australian than British, but you did it. Now, to be fair to
I'm pretty sure that is
they're not the first country to be outraged over LGBTQ plus things in nature, because remember the gay penguins, Roy and Silo? Well, after they tried to hatch a rock, idiots, they were then given a fertilized egg and ended up raising a chick together named Tango. It became an international story. There was even a book written about it, which predictably outraged conservative parents. And it was challenged in schools at the time across the country and became controversial again recently following the GOP's renewed homophobic push. But this book about gay birds also ruffled some feathers in other countries, pun intended, specifically Singapore, whose libraries literally pulled and destroyed copies of the book. See, we're not the only one.
Such a smart investment, Singapore library.
Over animals is not a new thing. And on the subject...
No surprise with there being hardcore Islamophiles
of gay penguins, since we're talking about them, well,
just as crazy as
it
Christians
brings me
here.
no pleasure to give you an update to that story. Roy and Silo broke up. So in 2005, the New York Times reported things began to fall apart in May of 2004 after the two were kicked out of their nest by two aggressive penguins. They drifted apart. That is genuinely heartbreaking, and I hate those aggressive penguins who push them out of their nest. I'm going to assume that they were homophobic. That's the only conclusion that you can reach.
I mean, that is what penguins do.
They
kick each other out of their nest so they can lay their eggs there.
But
a whole bunch of animals do that.
After they were pushed out of their nest, probably because they were gay. Maybe they were acting
because they're moochers.
I'm not very privy to penguin culture.
I ain't gonna do the work to make the nest. I'll just steal someone else's nest.
Zookeepers, and of course, these gay-ass birds did not like their female partners because they are gay as hell, and I'm guessing that there's not a lot of fish in the sea. Another pun, if you're a gay penguin, because that was a pretty rare thing to see. But I guess the conclusion of this video is that everything is stupid and the discourse surrounding queer issues is toxic, and those gay penguins who broke up with each other are canceled, as are the homophobes who bullied them into breaking up, I guess.
They're probably already dead by now because that arc was over 10 years ago.
To those gay penguins, we were rooting for you. I was going to call them F-slurs, but I'm trying to get monetization back on the channel.
Mike, can we not throw that out?
Maybe calling them F-slurs would help.
I know you're all trying to reclaim it, but it's a slur. Just please no.
Yeah,
Either way, this is where we're at, folks. 2023 discourse surrounding LGBTQ plus issues. A library posted a photograph of a fish that's trans, and bigots ratioed them and got triggered by it.
I don't even know if really calling it trans is really needed. You can just point out that they just changed their sex and all that.
Yeah.
My brain is melting.
It's not even... I don't even know if that would even be quite the same thing, because they don't have, like, gender dysphoria. They just change based upon their environment. That seems a little weird, like, trying to make it into trans. But yeah, we gotta see about conservatives and transphobes raging about fish being, able to change their sex.
Why am I not surprised?
Fucking Karens as always. You're all a bunch of Karens. Every time.
Yep.
I swear, if you Karen this, Karen that. Can you all just shut the hell up for once?
They will never shut up because
until they die.
Of course. Well, first off, they don't want gay people existing. Mm-hmm. Second off, they probably don't want trans people existing. Third off, they probably don't want interracial couples existing either.
They don't
because remember that Tennessee, I think they actually did manage to get it through. Have actually allowed people to not grant marriage licenses to not just same-sex couples but interracial and interfaith couples. So it shows why Biden had to stuck interracial marriage into his Protecting Marriage Act.
And guess
because we know that a lot of the Republicans who are being elected in that, they're not just against same-sex marriage, they're against interracial marriage as well.
They're against everything, you know.
Yep.
And
they're against literally everything.
And sucks to be you. Both bills are constitutional law by now, so nothing you can do about your shitty laws until the Supreme Court decides to go Roe v. Wade on them. But right now, they're still law of the land, so you can eat shit. Alright, so now we're done raging at them. What's next?
Is meat safe for you? And
This is the video I want to talk about. I've been talking about for months and months and months, and I kept forgetting to put on here. We're finally going to cover it. Now, I can never pronounce this YouTube channel's name. It's a German name, but we've covered it. We've watched a bunch of their videos on climate change. Cause remember, we watched the video where they were like way too like optimistic about solving climate change. We were like, that seems way too good to be true. But yeah, they did a video on is meat safe for you, because as we all know, that's a big problem with meat. How it's not good, healthy for you. Although it's not the meat. It's not the meat. It's what we do with the meat, like fast food and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and of course,
it's also dependent on the type of meat, of meat, and the dose and the amount of meat. The thing is, it's not the problem. Is not that we eat meat. The problem is
what
that
we do with it.
And we eat far too much of the wrong type of meat,
and probably eat too much meat overall.
Well, more generally, we eat too much. That's why we've got a massive obesity epidemic.
Unless you're in Africa, which is the exact opposite problem.
They don't have enough food because of the Western gluttony.
Mm-hmm. And not helping them develop when they decolonize. So this is a big thing in America, and I'm sure you guys down there that have demonized meat and stuff like that. But is meat really the issue? And of course, like vegetarians also like shit on meat all the time. But vegetarians meat
it's mostly your vague ones.
Yeah, because there's not really a lot like a hardcore like meat eaters and stuff like that. Like really smug about mostly vegetarians.
Remember, the only people that like that are like Jordan Peterson, and he fucking almost died about 3 times.
All right, so we're gonna see, is meat safe for you? Finally, after all these months to finally watch this video.
When our vegetarian ancestors started eating meat around 2 million years ago, it wasn't just because animals taste great, it was pure necessity. Climate change made many of the plants our ancestors relied on less available, and meat bridged that gap. From the discovery of fire at the latest, meat became a staple of the human diet. But over the last few years, eating meat has increasingly
More like
been
decades.
associated with health risks like heart disease, certain cancers, and an early death. So, how unhealthy is meat really?
This is an awesome YouTube channel. We need to probably watch more of the videos. If only I could just understand their names, it's German.
In this video, we'll only talk about meat. Dairy products deserve a video of their own. Biologically, we need to eat for 3 reasons. For energy, to acquire materials to fabricate our cells, and to get special molecules that our bodies can't make themselves. The energy and most of the materials come from the 3 macronutrients: fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. Proteins are the most important resource for repairing and replenishing our cell structures.
And you know where you get most of the protein from? Meat. You can't get from fruits. I don't know if there's any fruit or vegetable that gives out protein, but if there is, it's probably nowhere near enough to replace what meat can.
Spinach is one of the few. I think more when it comes to that, it'd be more legumes. So like your beans and that.
Yeah, but
that have quite a bit.
Yeah, they don't. Vegetables and fruits do not provide provide no protein or nowhere near enough that meat can do. Meat, that's the main thing, and that's where. Sorry, vegetarians.
And the specific one is vitamin B12.
Well, we're gonna get to that in a little bit, but yeah, that's what we're saying. Vegetarians, meat and meat. If you want to have a healthy diet, you gotta eat meat too. You gotta have a balanced diet of fruits, vegetables, and meat to get everything you need.
The special molecules are a large variety of vitamins and minerals we need to drive metabolic processes. Meat provides us with most of these things. It contains all essential amino acids our body needs and a lot of minerals like iron, zinc, and essential vitamins, some of which are barely found in plants like vitamin B12. Only one essential nutrient is missing in most of the meat we consume: vitamin C. It appears in almost all plants and supports our immune system as well as the development of connective tissues. After a few months without it, you'd get scurvy.
So the funny thing is, this video all right off the bat makes it sound like going almost all meat is better for you than being just vegetarian, if you think about it. Only like one thing that's not in meat, vitamin C, compared to the negatives that are not in vegetables that they don't have compared to meat. That's quite a start. Oof. I'm sure we just triggered vegetarians watching this video.
Yep, and the members of the religion of veganism. And yes, veganism is a religion.
Yep, they're so smug and condescending they think they're superior because they only eat fruit and vegetables. You're not you're not better than people who eat meat or stuff like that. You're no different. Your diet is just not as healthy for you as just meat eating too. Both have flaws. That's why we keep saying have a balance.
Also remember that Jordan Peterson tried that being said, Jordan Peterson did try an all meat diet and he fucking almost died. Because I think he did the meat thing and almost died. He went to Serbia, detox, got COVID, almost died again, and then I think he went to Croatia or something, and then nearly died a 3rd time.
But meat has another big advantage: its high bioavailability. Some of the nutrients in meat are broken down faster and available quicker than those from plants. Spinach, for example, contains more iron than meat, but it's absorbed much slower and the body needs more energy to digest it. Several health benefits have also been observed in communities that rely solely on meat. The Inuit, for example, are able to survive in extreme climate conditions on a purely meat-based diet if necessary. Since they consume the whole animal, including the organs, they get every single nutrient they need, including vitamin C. So meat itself is definitely not dangerous for us, but its health effects vary depending on how it's prepared and what animal it comes from.
Yep, that's the main problem. How much we eat, what kind of meat, and the stuff we do to it. That's the main problem with meat.
They're the big 3.
When talking about meat in the Western world, we generally mean muscle tissues that have a high nutrient density but also lack some of the vitamins that make it possible to survive on meat alone. The most healthy animals to eat are probably fish. Fish contains polyunsaturated fatty acids like omega-3, which may lower the risk of cardiovascular.
You know, I was thinking too, as we get through all these meats, we should ask, do we eat this kind of meat? Because I don't eat fish whatsoever. What about you?
I do from time to time. usually, if I'm going out to my grandparents, there will be times where we will have fish.
Yeah, my parents eat fish. And it's a delicacy in Maryland, especially crabs, but that's just not me.
Diseases and support anti-inflammatory immunity.
Most other fish I will eat.
Oh man, Maryland loves crabs, and I fucking hate Obey. That thing is like the nastiest smelling thing ever. I don't know how my state loves it so much.
Functions. As part of a balanced diet, fish can be eaten regularly without worries. Eating fish comes with its own bag of complications though, like overfishing and the destruction of the oceans.
Well, that has nothing to do with eating fish. That's just how we get the fish. That could be easily resolved. I mean, we have farms too that farm fish, for example. Maybe we should try and encourage that more to help the natural population recover. Fish, thankfully, since they spawn so much, they could probably recover pretty quickly if we stopped overfishing, unlike other animals. But yeah,
but that's only some species. Others are doomed. There's like 1 million fish species that are doomed to go extinct, and will, no matter what we do, and will within the next decade or two.
Yep, because of
climate change. Their numbers are so low that, and they've been so overfished that there's like 5 of them left.
We'll talk about that in another video. A close second is the most popular meat, chicken.
Yes, I do. White meat.
What?
Yep, chicken. Oh, that's the main one my family eats.
Yeah,
we eat is chicken.
Yeah, same here.
It's regarded as the meat
mostly like frozen from like grocery stores and put in an oven and all that, or eaten out, which is the worst.
with the fewest health risks. The only negative health effect of poultry is a bit controversial: fat. Its high content of saturated fats is associated with a higher cholesterol level and cardiovascular disease.
I'm sure a good chunk of that too is because eating fast food chicken.
But this idea has...
that wouldn't help.
I bet it's not as high as if you eat frozen chicken and baked in an oven at home from like supermarkets.
Also been criticized by a large number of scientists, arguing high cholesterol levels might be inherited and not caused by nutrition. So, in general, if you want meat and are concerned about your health, go for chicken.
Just do, as I said, just usually do, just try it. Aim more for the supermarkets than the processed ones, and you'll do better.
Yep.
Things start to get problematic with high intakes of red meat like beef, veal, pork, lamb, horse, and goat.
I'm sure a lot of this applies to like burgers too. The only things on this list, the only thing I eat is burgers, but that's not that often. What about you?
I'm fairly frequent. I'm pretty frequent with that.
Sounds like you eat more of them than me. Yet I'm the fat one here.
I do a for me partly I do a fair bit of walking, and I've also got a part-time job. So well, you don't.
I get on the bike all day, though. Remember?
Yeah, but it sounds like you've also got potentially you've got a metabolic. Have you actually been tested if you're actually diabetic?
No.
As in, no, you're not diabetic, or no, you haven't been checked?
Haven't been checked.
Oh, okay. You might want to. If you could ever afford to get a blood glucose meter, give it a check and see.
I know my dad is.
Yeah, which means you're at big risk that you could be turned to be specifically type 2 in your case due to your weight. Because my dad was, and he actually eventually wound up going to type 1 as his pancreas died. Now, thanks to having most of his stomach out, he's diet-controlled diabetic. Because it's not something you can you get better from. You can just control it with things.
Yep, the best thing I do is try to eat as less as possible and lose weight, which I already did 42 minutes on the bike today, and when I upload this video, I'm going to get on the bike again, try my best. But there's not really much I could do otherwise. Because I just, can't really control like what I eat, because I don't really like fast meat, healthy food that much, because it tastes like dog shit to me. So the best I can do is just try and eat as less as possible and exercise as much. But yeah, in terms of this stuff, only thing I eat on this list is just burgers, which are not frequent, and let's see what they said about the rest of it.
Meat like beef, veal, pork, lamb, horse, and goat.
Do you eat any of that other stuff?
What were they again? It was
Red meat like beef, veal, pork, lamb, horse, and goat.
pork and
I think my
third one.
I think my parents eat some of that. I don't eat any of that though, just burgers, which isn't that
A
common.
recently published study recommends, for example, a maximum of 23 grams of red meat per day, which is a very small steak per week. However, large-scale meta-analysis studies have shown that eating 100 grams of red meat every day increases the relative risk of diabetes by 19%, of strokes by 11%, and of colorectal cancer by 17%.
And those may not sound a lot, that is huge. 11% increase for strokes, 19% increase for diabetes, 17% for colorectal cancer. That is huge. Absolutely huge.
Even if it is only just boosting your lifetime thing from 5% to 6%, that's still not good. Considering all the other stuff that increases, all the other stuff just we encounter every day that increases our risk.
Like in Vicky 2, you can research stuff and they have like a 1% chance to show every month, and boy do they show pretty quick if you've noticed it too. Just 1% increase really can make that big of a difference.
Yep.
This sounds alarming, but before we panic,
Very alarming.
let's have a look at how these studies were conducted. Because this brings us to the second big problem when trying to answer the question of whether meat is unhealthy or not. Most studies that linked health risks to eating red meat were case control studies, which means taking a group of people with a disease and classifying them by their eating habits. The more red meat they consume, the more likely they were to contract certain diseases. The problem is that it's very hard to eliminate other factors. People who eat less meat tend to live a healthier lifestyle in general. They tend to eat more vegetables and fruit and are less likely to smoke and drink alcohol.
Sounds like also being like more balanced diet, which is the ultimate.
Yeah.
That's we need that. Both.
Yes.
Most studies try to eliminate these factors, but it's extremely hard to make definitive statements.
So yeah, what do you guys say about that so far? When it comes to this type of meat.
Far.
Yeah, it's pretty,
Yeah,
it is difficult to do
surprising.
studies because there's so many factors that can change it.
Yeah.
Things get worse when we look at processed meat, though.
Oh,
Processing
yeah.
meat means adding certain chemicals by curing, smoking, salting, or fermenting, or in other words, making it delicious. Bacon, ham, salami, sausages, and hot dogs contain chemicals.
I eat none of this stuff. I used to eat hot dogs as a kid, not anymore, so none of this stuff applies to me.
Very rarely.
But my parents, they do eat bacon, hot dogs, and stuff like that.
that are harmful for us,
But not
my
me.
parents.
like nitrates and nitrites.
I'll have it like I have like a ham and cheese pizza. I'll try and I go there once a week.
Actually,
or I'll
nice thought of it too. There might be a processed meat I eat, pepperoni on pizza, but pepperoni is small enough that it probably is not that big of a deal. Maybe.
again it would be very much dosage dependent.
that can
It would
damage
have
the
to be
DNA
the thing, yeah.
in our digestive system and lead to cancer. The WHO reviewed 800 studies over 20 years and concluded that processed meat is strongly linked to an increased risk of colorectal cancer. Each extra 50 grams of processed meat per day increases your relative risk of cancer by 18%. When it comes to cancer risk, processed meat is now in the same category as plutonium, asbestos, and smoking.
Processed meat up there with smoking and plutonium and asbestos.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty
Confirmed
devastating.
risk.
That is
Confirmed
hard. That
risk.
is that should hurt your hearts hearing that. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Because we have to discuss with like smoking and stuff like that, but people just love their processed meat. Ah.
Yep. Love their
The
kids and
WHO
meat.
highlights that its research is only about the question of whether or not something causes cancer and not to what extent. But processed meat may also significantly increase the chance of suffering from diabetes, strokes, and coronary heart disease.
And it doesn't say here, but here's the chance. Processed meat increase your chance of stroke by 13%, diabetes by 51%, and heart disease by 42%.
Yep.
That is
7.5.
stunning.
That jumps them. It jumps them to over 7% lifetime risk.
Oh my god, that is astonishing increase.
Oh yeah.
It also makes a difference what sort of life our meat lived when it was still part of a living being. It's common to feed larger...
Because slaughterhouses are very unsafe and unsanitary to kill animals. And that's even in America. Just take a look at meat processors in like undeveloped countries. They do it way worse. Disease is going to make it a lot more worse too.
Amounts of antibiotics to livestock in order to prevent diseases which can spread antibiotic resistance. Combined, a high consumption of both red and processed meat could increase your chance of premature death by up to 29%.
29% increase in chance of death.
29%.
That is devastating.
This means if your chance of dying is 3% this year, it's now 4%. This might not sound like a lot, but tiny percentages have a huge impact on societies of millions. They also seem harmless until they affect you.
Yeah.
To blame
It'd
meat
be more
alone
a case of how many years does it take off your life, not
bad health
risk of premature death. It's how many years off your life does it take.
would be wrong though.
It sounds like it'd be about.
There is no evidence.
It sounds like it'd take a good couple of years off.
That the very essence of meat has any negative effect beyond its high fat content.
Yeah, according to this, the main problem with meat itself is just high fat content, which could be good somewhat, like milk and stuff has very high fat. It helps you a little bit, especially if like you're growing up and stuff, because you need a lot of fat. But after a while, having a lot of fat is not good at all.
It depends on it also very much depends on the type of fat.
Yep, because there's so many different types of fats.
And even this point is highly contentious. Just like with many other pleasures in life, sometimes too much of a good thing is harmful. Most public health agencies suggest cutting meat consumption to 500 grams a week, while...
Oh, you ever heard of maybe doing it in American? Because we don't really know what that gram stuff means if you don't know that.
Studies suggest cutting down processed meat as much as possible. So if you feast on meat no more than once or twice a week, you should be good. For most people, this already means a drastic change. Week as possible. So if you feast on meat no more than once or twice a week, you should be good.
Once or twice, yeah.
I think
that's about right.
I think it depends on the week. Sometimes I might eat more than 2 times a week. Sometimes I might eat about the same or less. It really just depends.
For most people, this already means a drastic change in their diets, though. The average American consumes around almost 1,600 grams of meat a week.
Guys, I think it just recommend like 50 grams a week or so just recently, and on average Americans are eating 1,600 grams a week. Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah.
The average German, 1,100.
No wonder you're
the fattest country in the world.
Yeah.
That's one thing we're number one at.
That's 32 times the recommended dose. Yep, they're literally eating 6 months worth of meat a week. No, actually, it's worse than that because it's 52. Hang on.
But unfortunately, that's a big problem too.
7 months. 7 months of meat. And about 10 to 11 days.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Because unfortunately, that's a problem too in the developing world. The more a country industrializes and develops, the meat consumption goes up massively. So, so it's not just an American thing; it's just human society, unfortunately.
Grams a week.
Because people really love meat, as you can tell.
And many of us,
like German said, average German eats 1,100 grams of meat a week, and I don't think Germany has that big of a fat problem like America does. Maybe you should look that up. Because I know it was Mexico and China, I think, actually challenged America recently in terms of the most obesity in the world. So our number one in being fat is actually being challenged.
So
quite curious to see how obese Germans are.
Okay, let's do this. We'll do that. Oh, that's going by gender. It's not kind of general. Hold on.
Because I know...
Here we go.
Last I remember checking was at least...
Okay, so the only reason that the US is not number one is because a whole bunch of countries above them, the 10 above them, are like Nauru, Marshall Islands, Tonga, and Samoa. They're all like really small populations.
They're going by per capita.
Yeah, this was per capita, but where is Germany?
Because I remember recently, like, Mexico and China were trying to challenge us, too, in that regard.
Germany is 79th. New Zealand is 22nd. Australia is 27th. Canada's 26th. And America's 11th. So out of the bigger countries, the US is... Yeah, they're right up there. Now China's only 169th because they've got 1.4 billion people. There's India, by the way.
I just looked up this thing. I was looking up how obese is Germany. This first thing came up. A quarter of Germans meet the definition of obese. Now to put that in perspective, last time I remember checking, well, it's not obese. I remember it was like a third of Americans are obese, but another third are overweight. So 2/3 of Americans are overweight. So, yeah.
If this number's right, I'm seeing here 41%, 42% are obese of Americans.
So much for your plan, Michelle Obama.
Yep, which means probably you're going to make the argument that nearly every single American that you see is either overweight or obese. Mm-hmm. There's very few that are I think it's something like 70% or some insane number.
Yeah, last I saw was like just a third were healthy weight. But as we can see, that's gone down a lot.
Eat much, much more. If you're not really sure, make a small note whenever you eat meat for a week or two. You'll be surprised how much it really is.
Of Americans are overweight or obese.
Yep, I told you that.
3/4.
Last I saw, like I told you, last time I saw, and that was like a long time ago. It was like 2/3 were overweight in some regard. Too. The American spirit, don't you know?
Yep.
This video would benefit from cutting down on meat.
Well, it's not just cutting down meat.
Australia's not far behind. Australia's not far behind, though. We're at 2/3. And the OECD average is 60%.
Well, that's the unfortunate problem when you have a developed country. That's going to happen. And then you have the reverse problem in Africa, where it's malnourished.
There's still the fact that the meat industry is one of the largest contributors to climate change.
Oh yeah, another problem with meat is that it's a massive contributor to climate change, as we covered some time ago. And there's not really much we can do about that because people just love eating meat, as we could see. Like we covered we covered like to make just like I think it was like 1 pound of meat cost a massive amounts of food and water just to make that one thing of meat and stuff like that. Like unless people stop consuming meat, the only thing I could think of in terms of like meat causing climate change would be like lab grown meat being a thing that hopefully doesn't consume as much. Like that's the only thing I could think of, because there's nothing else you could do. People just love meat. As we see, the more developed you become, the more much meat eaters you become.
And has reached a scale where it's
Germany,
impossible.
France, and Italy are around 50%. UK is 60, and it's 2/3 in Spain.
I wonder how like Japan is.
Oh, yep.
Since they have like the most healthy diets, that's why they live so long
7%.
Yep, there you go. 7% of Japanese are overweight. What was it? Overweight or obese?
3.6 are obese, and there's very few Japanese are obese, but about 22, 33, but about a quarter of Japanese people are overweight.
I mean, it's still better than everywhere else so far. It shows how better off. That's one thing Japan's better, and we shit talk them throughout the show. It's much better in regards when it comes to like their diet, and they live longer too, so that shows.
Whoa! Dude! Jesus!
What?
I just saw how much China's has gone.
It's up with America.
It's over half.
Obese?
Over half are overweight or obese. I'd say the obesity numbers are...
I told you they challenged America.
Low. Again, it's a similar thing with that.
I told you they challenged America.
Yeah.
There's only one thing left we probably haven't checked. Good old Mexico, since I remember some time ago they actually took over our #1 spot for a bit. Let's see how fat you are, Mexico.
3/4.
Yep. It's unfortunate, but hey, that's like I said, that's what happens when you're a developed country. That happens.
To deliver millions of
Because when people have excess money and food available, they are going to eat.
tons of meat and still treat animals with dignity. We've already discussed that in detail in another video. All in all, in moderation, meat is not unhealthy, and you don't need to become vegetarian overnight to have a real impact on your health and the planet.
That's what we...
Basically,
your lifestyle...
everyone in you go to Nauru, you will find basically no healthy weight adults. 95% overweight. With 71% obese in Nauru. It is the fattest, it is the most overweight or obese country on the planet.
Oh boy, what do you gotta say about that?
That is insane.
I guess the only thing we could say is there are only 11,000 people, so that's the only thing you could say. It's just per capita.
Our choices do matter, for yourself and for others. The key is being open to trying something new once in a while. Maybe you'll discover your new favorite dish. Until you try, you'll never know.
Literally, 688 healthy adults in all of Nauru. Healthy weight adults, only 688.
So yeah, we covered the rest of the field, but man, that was a lot to research and talk about because it was so interesting. But yeah, we gotta see about that. Meat is vital and healthy for us. It's just how much we eat, the animal, and what we do to that meat.
Absolutely. We eat way too much.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I'm gonna find out something.
But of course, there's nothing we can do about it because people just want meat. Unless some radical change in society becomes like anti-meat. Only thing I can think of is lab-grown meat, and that's pretty much it at the moment. So I guess you were looking up something.
Yep. Who's on top? So, in 2000, it was in 2020. Who's on top? Hong Kong are on top, with the US in second and Australia in third. Geez, why am I not surprised Australia's just behind America? And based on trends, I reckon there's a decent... Oh, no, we're going up. We jumped that very fast there.
Are you challenging us down there?
Yes, we are.
You're gonna take...
we are. Don't
Boy,
forget, we've got...
Boy, we're America, remember? We're #1 here. Don't ever challenge our fatness, do you understand? Yeah.
I'm afraid not only have you been challenged, you've been beaten by Hong Kong. and by 13 kilos of meat per person too.
It's funny, but it really isn't because it's not good for society for people to be overweight and all that.
No.
But yeah, eat healthy, eat a balanced diet if you can, eat less, exercise. That's really all we could say that you could do for yourself because the rest of it...
India, Bangladesh, Ethiopia, Nigeria, the Gambia, Sierra Leone, Sri Lanka, Rwanda, Mozambique, and Uganda.
What about them?
They're the bottom 10 for meat consumption.
Yeah, and one thing in common. I think sound like almost every country you said was in Africa, and they're undeveloped. So they don't really eat meat as much. 4,
5, 6. 6 of the bottom 10.
Yep.
Are all in Africa. And actually 7 out of 10. And the other 3 one's of course India. And the other 2 are Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, which India. So
yep, and all 3 of them are undeveloped compared to us. So no surprise. Oh, that's right too. Another thing too is India, since they're Hindu, they believe eating cows is evil. So that's probably another thing too. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of Hindus in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, since they're close to India too. That probably influences that as well. Alright, but that was definitely a very interesting video. Finally nice to talk about that after all these months I wanted to do it. So now, on to the next topic.
Fox News rages over furries.
Yep.
So Hinduism is 8% in Bangladesh. And...
Fox, just, you never cease to amaze me how silly you are. Raging about furries.
And Hinduism is 12%, with Buddhism being the main one in Sri Lanka.
I'm actually surprised how low that is in Sri Lanka. I know it's gonna be a minority in Bangladesh and Muslim. I thought it was gonna be a lot higher than 8%. But hey, the more you know. Alright, so now, since we have a furry here, are you ready to see Fox News rage at you?
Oh, I love it. I want to hear this. This is gonna be...
Hey, let's watch.
I want to drink the Fox News tears.
Alright, let's watch the cope and deceive.
Fox News, as always, sticking to the important issues. And Jesse Waters here decided to grill a furry. Yes, you heard that right. A furry.
All right, David, how old are you?
I'm 32.
And what are you supposed to be dressed up as here?
Well, currently, I'm a raccoon.
And why?
That you, Sly Cooper?
Well, isn't it fun?
Careful, Carmelita might be on your ass.
Oh, for me, absolutely. I'm hoping it's fun for everyone around me. The joy of bringing smiles to everyone's face is really the only reason that I like to do this. Getting smiles and bringing people happiness in all sorts of ways. The furries, I know specifically, are great at art and dance and theatrical performance.
Let me just pause here to give you a little bit of the backstory. So Ron DeSantis, of course, has been cracking down on trans people.
Yeah.
He's been cracking down on drag shows. And basically, as an unintended consequence,
I can barely hear. There's so much cutout.
It has now banned
There
young
we go.
people from going to any sort of furry event. Why? Because the argument from the right is this stuff is like inherently sexual. Look, is it possible that in some instances, in some circumstances, this is sort of like a fetish thing for some people? Of course. But that doesn't mean that, every furry event is sexual by its nature?
Of course
That's
it's not.
Not true.
Definitely
right?
not.
It's not true.
Same goes for like
this,
drag queen shows or whatever.
On Fox News
Yeah,
rush out there to
exactly.
defend. Oh no, what he's doing is really smart.
Not
bro.
everything
Focusing
is
on the
sexual,
serious
for
issues.
God's sake.
Like adults wearing.
Just like
Well, that's their problem. Well, the problem is the thing is that
they think
people
everything
like
is.
Fox News and that they make exactly, they make everything sexual.
Just like they think anime is all pornographic and stuff like that because they think of
course.
hentai. And they think animation's only for kids. Sorry, no it's not. Adults consume it too, so deal with it.
Yeah.
Costumes.
Well,
Same for video games too. Remember, crying moan about sex in video games because only kids play video games, even though, as we covered in the show before, years ago, studies show, at least in America, that the average age of video gamers is freaking 38. And that was a long time ago. Like almost 10 years ago. It's probably gotten older since. So, shut up and stop being a Karen and messing with our hobbies.
well, I mean, you're also great at spankings. Did you see the video we just played? What's going on with the spankings at the furry conventions?
This is so disingenuous. He took a video of somebody dressed as a furry getting spanked, being hit with a paddle like once, and his extrapolation from that is everything.
So,
it's all
who
sexual.
cares? People are
Any
into
event
spanking?
with furries is 100% sexual. That's his takeaway from it. It's just
I wouldn't be.
dishonest.
Is it a big thing in the furry community about spanking?
It could potentially.
And it gets what.
It's a thing, but it's not a big thing.
And also, more importantly, you Karen, it's consenting adults. So how about you go?
Yeah.
How about you go buzz off?
And this is a restaurant that is pretty close to one of the conventions that we set up every year. And at the Harbor House, it's customary in Germanic tradition.
It says on the banner, people dress as animals for sexual fun. Way to bias it, of course.
Some do, but no, that's not.
Some do,
constant.
some don't. How hard is that to understand?
I guess slap the asses of all the patrons. I don't know why.
I didn't know the German...
That's kind of a ridiculous response, too. That's kind of a ridiculous response. Just make the argument I made, which is, no, furry stuff is not inherently sexual in all circumstances. There are plenty of kid-friendly furry events. Just make that point. That's the point.
So why do you want kids around people dressed up as squirrels getting spanked?
Me, personally, I don't.
Exactly. He doesn't. No normal person does. It's just, again, total red herring. Effectively, kids are banned from all these events, even if they're not adult-themed. This is the unintended consequences. It's like with drag shows, right? The assumption is 100% of them are sexual. Yeah, but they're not. But that's not true. So, should kids stay away from adult-themed things? Absolutely. But if it's not adult-themed, it's, to steal an old phrase from Obama, which I think is perfect in this scenario, don't use a hatchet when you should be using a scalpel. Right?
Definitely an adult-only environment for that. The furry conventions themselves don't have anything to do with that, though. The furry conventions themselves are really about community and bringing people together. You know, a lot of us, we're not so socially, it's a little bit tough. You know, it's easy to make fun of furries.
Oh, that's actually kind of adorable, right? He's like, a lot of us furries are socially awkward, but this is how we like to get together and find community, is we dress up as furries and then we meet each other.
And so what if they do? How about that?
Come on, man. This is the issue that the right is, like, crusading on. Gotta crack down on these evil furries, bro. DeSantis, go give people healthcare. By the way, we talked about this a while ago, but it should be reiterated. Hundreds of thousands of Floridians lost healthcare because DeSantis rejected
Medicaid and that's
money.
More important. How about that?
That's what you should be focusing on. Get people healthcare.
Like
Get people higher wages. No, instead he's waging a war on the furry community.
Why are you upset that kids are not allowed to be at the furry convention?
Well, me personally, I think that it is a great way to include everyone, no matter, you know, what their age. It's nothing, there's nothing inherently sexual about these conventions.
Exactly.
You have panels that teach you how to create costumes or dance or, you know, we have variety shows and all kinds of stuff, but it's not sexual. It has nothing to do with that.
Okay, you say it's not sexual.
Exactly.
That's fine. We have video that proves otherwise. But if, like, the governor said you can't have kids at the convention, why wouldn't you just say, okay, it's too bad, move on? Why are you and your crew so insistent on having the kids there?
Because furry conventions can be for kids, too. Like, it's not a big deal.
I don't think that there's a huge backlash, but I mean, I could be wrong. There's, from my understanding, it is, from my understanding, the convention just wants to avoid any legal gray areas that might be present in the law.
There is no massive backlash to it. They're just afraid of the legal gray areas. They don't want to be prosecuted on one of these furry things if kids are there. And so they're like, okay, there we go. No kids. Let's, you know, we'll comply. So he's like, his premise is wrong. His assumption is wrong. But of course, the whole purpose of the segment, Jesse Waters is great at this, is it's like, bring somebody on and just try to make a mockery, right? And he did this with, what was it, the Reddit anti-work page or something? And the guy was a terrible representative of that sort of a position. And so it became, you know, sort of fodder to beat up on these people. It's very straw man-y. Bring on, like, the worst representative of one of these communities and then beat them up. Now, to be fair, this guy's, I think he's actually doing a half-decent job where he's being very clear and saying, no, adult-themed things are just for adults, but it's not like every furry convention is a sexual thing. So, yeah, that's effectively why kids should be allowed. I mean, look, it's like, remember back in the day, when I was a kid, you go to McDonald's, and there would be somebody there sometimes dressed as Ronald McDonald on one of the
Chuck
days.
E. Cheese.
Like, face paint to the kids and stuff. And if, like, that was banned because it's drag or because it's a furry or whatever, just a
Does someone dress up as Chuck E. Cheese and his teammates at Chuck E. Cheese walk around high-fiving people, hugging kids and stuff like that? Is that sexualization of kids? No. It's not a big deal.
adult dressed as something else. If you disagree with that and you speak about it, is this a fair reaction? Is it a fair reaction to be like, well, why do you care? Why are you so insistent that it not be banned? Because, like, let the kids have fun, right? This is harmless. This is harmless. And it's like, you can't do something that's kind of authoritarian and then be like, well, why do you disagree? I disagree because it's authoritarian, of course. It's not the biggest deal in the world, but then again, you're not focusing on the big deals. You're not focusing on getting people health care and higher wages.
Or if they do focus on them, they want the worst things to happen.
This is where Fox News is at, man. It's culture war 24/7.
Because conservatives are thugs.
Go after gay people.
And conservatism is evil.
Go after drag shows.
Yes.
They're leaning into this, even though they just got draxed in the last midterm. Why? They focused a lot on trans people in the midterms. There was dozens of ads going after trans people in the midterms. They did this crime fear-mongering. Well, that didn't come to fruition either. Turns out you guys were viewed as the extreme ones because you have gone full authoritarian on issues like abortion. And you're trying to deflect by going, no, trans people, no, furries. It's not working.
We're misunderstood as a group, and it's very easy to vilify us.
Okay. Do you blame yourself at all for being misunderstood?
No, they don't do anything wrong.
Raccoon.
Oh, absolutely. I think that this is absolutely crazy and weird and fun. And that's the point. I think, it's supposed to gain attention. I like being on stage. I like performing as a character. I like bringing joy to people.
Okay.
That's why I
If
do
I
it.
came to one of your
there are hundreds of thousands of
conventions,
furries.
David, or maybe we sent Johnny to the convention, what should we dress up as?
You can dress up however you want. We've had Jack Sparrows show up. We've had all kinds of different animals. What kind of animal do you think you would be?
Probably a dinosaur.
Jesse, you answered that question kind of quickly, didn't you? It's almost like you thought about this before, right?
Yeah, probably.
Like, I wish I could do that. You can't help but like this guy who's being interviewed, right? Because he's just like, yeah, I know this is weird. Yeah, I know it's kind of goofy, but I like dressing up like it, and I like making people happy.
If they enjoy it, that's all that matters.
God bless, man. We used to call this freedom. This used to be called freedom back in the day, but DeSantis is
But the right does not like freedom.
Y'all, do me a favor and like.
No, they hate it.
They do not like freedom whatsoever. All right, so what do you guys say about that? Them being Karens over nothing again, as always.
They talk about. I love how they're just like that around furries. As someone who is, it's just hilarious.
So maybe you want to give your perspective on being a member of the community, since everyone thinks you're all molesting kids and whatever.
Fuck off! No, dude. Look, my favorite anthropomorphic furry character is Crystal Fox, and there's a couple others from Alpha995 on Twitter who I like as well. But just because we're into animals who have been anthropomorphized and are as intelligent as humans, or even more so in some and more intelligent than most in some cases, does not mean that we're interested in kids in that way. Because what the fuck?
Gee, I wonder if they have a meltdown over Thomas being anthropomorphic trains. And of course, not really into the sexual kink, but definitely into the Sly Cooper series, as everyone knows. Because that series is awesome. Alright, so now, on to the next topic.
Go to saved voting. It's WTF.
Yes, I know, it sounds very weird, but this actually happened. So, of course, for all of you that don't know, the Supreme Court is a piece of shit. And remember back in 2013, they actually did a ruling that weakened the Voting Rights Act and made it easier for states in the South to discriminate against minorities because, they're going to vote not in their vote for Republicans, and they don't like that, so they got to restrict the vote as much as possible to prevent them from losing. So, another one of those bills came up recently, something similar to that, and I didn't know about it, but apparently everyone was afraid that they're going to destroy the Voting Rights Act once again. But, surprisingly, they did the exact opposite. And the reason why, from what I saw, is because it was either Alabama or Mississippi, one of those states, went so far racist that it was too much for even SCOTUS to, go, yeah, you're okay with it. Oh my god, it was wild. But hey, Maybe a rare scores W, but let's watch.
Yeah.
So here's something that I definitely did not have on my 2023 bingo card. Good news from the Supreme Court. Yes, you heard that correctly. So in the case of Allen v. Milligan, most legal observers expected the Supreme Court to basically deliver the death blow to the Voting Rights Act, which I think is a reasonable expectation given Roberts' past hostility towards it. But that didn't actually happen. Both Roberts and Kavanaugh joined the 3 liberal justices to not only save the Voting Rights Act, but reaffirm its importance. Feels like we're living in the Twilight Zone, right?
Yeah.
Now, the implications of this are broad, but first, let's get to the details. So after the 2020 census, Alabama Republicans redrew their state's electoral map in a way that intentionally diluted the power of black voters. And as HuffPost explains, the case came about after Alabama Republicans who dominate the state's politics drew a new congressional map that cracked the black community across the historic Black Belt, named for its soil, splitting the predominantly black city of Montgomery into 3 majority white congressional districts, while packing the rest of the state's black community into the 7th district. Now let's pause right there so I can give you some additional context. So black Americans in this state account for nearly 1/3 of the state's total population.
That seems actually low. Only a third? Because a lot of blacks are in the South. Like, oh my, that seems kind of low. I'm actually kind of surprised, like Baltimore County where I grew up, it was like almost 60% black. So I thought it would be a lot higher down there. Quite interesting.
Because of the way that Republicans redrew district lines, they only made up 1 majority district of 7. Now, to help you visualize how Republicans are able to do things like this, I want to show you this guide on how gerrymandering works. I'm assuming that you already saw this, but I think it's still a really useful visual aid for purposes of this video. So this is a hypothetical state map with 50 precincts, 60% blue and 40% red. Now, if you were drawing up 5 districts with the goal of maximizing fairness, you would draw those lines vertically to give 3 districts to blue and 2 to red. Or if you wanted to use the majority advantage to totally diminish the minority, you could draw the lines horizontally, with blue having a majority in all 5 districts. However, you can even redraw the entire map so the minority are actually in the majority in 3 of the 5 districts. So there's a lot of ways that you can use gerrymandering to decrease representation if you're creative enough. And Republicans are absolutely creative in the ways in which they disenfranchise voters, particularly voters of color. So rather than giving black voters an additional majority district, which would give them another seat in Congress, Republicans decided to carve up a majority black city so whites would outnumber blacks in each of these districts, thus diluting the power of black voters specifically. And they did this because they know that black voters disproportionately vote for the Democratic Party. And this is a tactic that is not new, to say the least. Now, the
gerrymandering is very common. Every single state does it. Even majority Democrat states also do the same thing to try and stop Republicans from getting power. It's nothing new, but of course, the Republicans are the one that go all racist about it.
Supreme Court said no to this. But it's not just a win for black voters in Alabama. It may be a win in other states as well, because as Politico reports, the ruling increases the odds that minority voters will prevail in other pending redistricting challenges in states like Georgia and Louisiana.
This actually happened over the last 2 years after the census was done. Because remember, for all of you who don't know, every 10 years, America has a census that calculates how many people are in America. And after they do that, and it's all been calculated, they then update the Electoral College map and stuff. So states will lose representation and gain representation. And that's what's been going on like the last few years. They gerrymander and redistribute maps and all that and such. So that's what this is all about. And because I follow, I can't remember what the... Let's Talk Politics, there we go. Who's covered this for like the last 2 years. And like, God, over half the states have done some sort of gerrymandering and stuff like that. Yeah. And a whole bunch of them have actually been struck down. Even Maryland tried to do one where they almost... I think they tried to do one where Andy Harris would finally lose his seat to be all Democrats. And that was actually struck down recently. Last year.
The challenge is to force those states to draw additional districts where minority voters can elect their chosen candidates, a prospect that could lead to a handful of new Democratic seats in the U.S. House. So
and that's why they try to do gerrymandering, especially down in the South, because they don't want minorities to have power to get Democrats in who might actually do progressive things, hopefully, and conservatives do not like that. So, since they can't convince people to vote for him because their ideas suck, they have to try and rig the elections in their favor. As always.
Okay, this is a very, very big deal. Now, we're going to get into the legal reasoning and some more technical details. This is a little bit dense, but bear with me. I think this is all important. So basically, this decision all comes down to Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, and the court held that Alabama violated this provision. And as Mark Joseph Stern of Slate explains, this tactic is plainly illegal under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which prohibits voting laws, including redistricting plans that have a racially discriminatory effect, meaning a disparate impact on black voters. Robert's opinion for the...
North Carolina tried to do this, remember, a few years ago?
Yep, I remember that.
And I think it was the Supreme Court said it was going after blacks with surgical precision, remember?
Yep, I
Court on
remember
Thursday
that.
traced the history of racist voter suppression after the Civil War, leading up to the initial passage of the Voting Rights Act in 1965. He explained how in 1980, the Supreme Court held that the law barred only discriminatory intent, not effect, a decision that produced an avalanche of criticism both in the media and within the civil rights community. Roberts wrote that some lawmakers were wary that an effects test, which measured impact rather than intent, would require a quota system or racial proportionality in districting, raising equal protection concerns. And so Congress settled on a bipartisan, hard-fought compromise which amended Section 2 to require that the electoral process be equally open to participation by all racial groups. What happened? We will debate that question for decades, but one answer leaps off the page. Alabama pushed too far, too fast, too transparently. The state wanted the court to either gut the Voting Rights Act under the guise of interpretation or simply strike it down as unconstitutional.
Like they tried to do with Roe v. Wade, which unfortunately they were successful on.
Roberts turned down both requests, and Kavanaugh went along with him. Notably, his analysis of Alabama's map itself is extremely brief, as if to illustrate that this case is not a close call. He explained that the court uses the Jingles test to identify a violation of Section 2. Under that test, a minority group must be large and compact enough to constitute a majority in one reasonably configured district. The group must be politically cohesive, meaning its members generally share the same political preferences, and it must be able to demonstrate that white voters can consistently block its preferred candidate. If all these conditions are met, the group must then show that elections are not equally open to racial minorities under a totality of the circumstances. So the non-technical TLDR version is that Republicans got a little bit too brazen with their racism in the way that they redrew district maps in this state.
It's like they got so brazen with the
even more shocking,
laws.
and Mark Joseph Stern points this out, is that Roberts has a history of being against the Voting Rights Act. He wrote literally dozens of memos against the Voting Rights Act while he was an attorney at Reagan's Department of Justice, and on top of that, on the Supreme Court, he voted to narrow...
probably opposes the civil right, probably wants to go back to slavery.
Of the scope of the Voting Rights Act, but now all of a sudden he did a complete 180, and he didn't just vote to save it, but he reaffirmed its importance in his majority decision, which he wrote, where he explains the history of this law and why it's necessary. So this is completely unexpected, but very much welcome, obviously, and I don't know why he did this, but I'm glad that he did. So this news, you know, it just makes me feel a little bit better about the future of American democracy, even though there's so much more that we need to do to make our democracy more democratic, for lack of a better word. But I mean, even though there's a lot more things that we have to do, and the Supreme Court obviously is still not legitimate, this is just genuinely good news that is worth celebrating.
So yeah, what do you guys say about that? The surprise good news that they actually saved the Voting Rights Act.
That is lucky.
That is lucky. I'm quite stunned. Absolutely stunning about that. Alright, so that's good and all. Now, hopefully we can get rid of them and replace them with progressives and actually reverse all these horrible things, and then we'll be in a much better place. Alright, so now, on to the next topic.
Climate change.
Alright, we're down to the final topic, as we were originally going to cover, the El Nino that just happened recently, but of course some other things came up recently. So, what would you want to talk about of the two first?
Okay, so first one will be El Nino because, put simply, this summer in Australia, it's not going to be if temperature records are broken, it's going to be how many. They're predicting 52 and 53 degrees Celsius.
Which is over 100 degrees for us Americans. Probably over 110 by that point. That's probably over 110 or 120.
That's coming up on 130.
Whew, boy, that's like Death Valley in America. That's like the hottest place too.
54 degrees Celsius is 130 Fahrenheit.
Yep, that's the unfortunate reality when you live on a continent that's mostly a desert. So yeah, so for all of you who don't know, because we never talked about this before, because we don't really talk about climate change as much as we probably should, but in the Pacific Ocean, there's this weird thing that happens every few years in the Pacific where temperatures in the Pacific get warmer or colder on average. And right now what's starting is called an El Nino, which means the temperatures of the Pacific will be much warmer than average, and when it's colder, it's La Nina. Now you're probably thinking,
yep, La Nina. Because we've had La Nina the last 3 years.
Yeah, it's every few years it changes and stuff. Some last a little bit longer and such. Wasn't one of them recently like really long, like unusual?
3 years, 3 consecutive years of La Nina.
I thought that was normal. I thought it was like one was like 4 or 5 years, something like that.
No, it's usually only 1 to 2.
But anyways,
usually 1, maybe 2 years. 3 is unusual.
But anyways, it changed recently to El Nino. So you're probably thinking, it's just ocean temperatures in the Pacific getting a little bit warmer or colder. What difference does it make? Well, that actually affects the climate all around the world. This one area affects that much. Yep. So,
in fact, mainly it affects the entire, all countries around the Pacific Ocean.
Like you.
So everywhere from Australia to America, from Peru to China.
Well, that's going to be a little bit interesting to talk about. So, like for you all under El Nino, it causes you to have drier, hotter weather, right?
Hotter and drier conditions and more intense bushfires seasons.
Yeah. But
2019, 2020 black summer bushfires that burned.
Yep, we covered that.
Country of Syria.
Yep, we covered that.
That was an El Nino one.
And that was really, really bad when that happened years ago.
Oh, it was. That one the smoke from that went around the world twice and reached space. They were actually able to detect it using a couple of the low orbit, one of the ones that sit not far above the atmosphere and only stay there for like a year.
Yeah,
they actually were able to detect the smoke, which is absolutely insane.
Yeah, but here's an interesting thing. For me, when El Nino or La Nina happens, we get the reverse of what you guys get.
Yep.
So because of that, when we have El Nino, it's actually better for us because that makes it more also drier on our side. So you know what that means? Hurricanes are less likely to form usually, which is the biggest weather concern for us on the East Coast is hurricanes. Yep. Whereas La Nina, hurricanes are more frequent, which is last few years. I think last year was overactive for hurricanes, but like 2020 and 2021 was very, very active. I don't think we've had a single hurricane yet, or storm formed once in Atlantic this year. Because from like 2014 to 2021, we would have storms form before the season would actually start. These last 2 years, finally are going back to like normal terms of like start dates, which was actually concerning. Because we all know climate change is going to probably make the hurricane season extend, just like it did for fire season, like in California, and for you guys too. I bet fire season's all year around for you now.
Ooh. It hasn't started yet, but that's only because we're in the dead of winter. But come probably October. We'll probably have our first fires. But
because I remember it used to be California would have like an actual like fire season, but now it's all year pretty much now, unfortunately.
Yep, for them, and that's going to be happening soon in Australia. That it's nearly there in New South Wales, and it's nearly there here in South Australia. We're I think now September to May. Literally, only winter is not a fire risk at the moment.
So yeah, I'm actually looking on Wikipedia right now. If it would just load up the pictures, because it showed like what the impacts of El Nino would be during the months. So like according to El Nino for June and August in the world, like you guys all the way up to like Oceania and India and parts of like New Zealand, it would be dry and warmer. Like some parts of New Zealand, the other parts to your east and like your northeast, like your tropical area, would be like more drier and cooler than normal. Parts of the Pacific would be wetter, like the Pacific Northwest of America would be wetter. It would be in the Caribbean dry and warmer, which hurts hurricane production. Which, thank you, it makes South America's Pacific coastline and for some reason Brazil warmer, and it makes like southern tip of like Chile wetter. But that covers like a whole big chunk of area. But if it was in December or February when this happened, your northern tip, all the way up to like parts of like the Pacific would be drier. Parts of the Pacific would be wet and warm. Man, parts of South America would be wetter than average, warmer than average, drier than average. The South America, the southern of America would be wetter and cooler than normal. The New England area would be warmer. The Pacific Northwest would be much warmer. Japan would be drier. Southern China, India, Southeast Asia would be both drier and warmer. Parts of Africa would be drier and wetter than normal. But yeah, so you guys, see what I mean? This little bit of area in the Pacific, temperature variations affects the weather for all of us around the world. That is huge. And because of that, I'm sure we're going to have the next few years, we're probably going to set records for temperatures, even though we probably already were.
And you know how they talk about global warming reaching 1.5 degrees? Within the next 5 years, an El Nino event, we're going to bump 1.5 for the first time.
Which is not good.
No, because already so we're talking about things like tipping points in the climate system. We've already lost the Greenland ice sheet is doomed. That's gone. That's going to be gone. The West Antarctic ice sheet is also doomed. Look at this.
But Crowder said there's more snow and ice in Antarctica and Greenland, remember?
Yeah, only in specific years. Only the rate of increase is slowed.
Yep.
It's actually the rate has got in the West Antarctic East Antarctic ice sheet has gone negative in the last 10 years, and the West Antarctic ice sheet is basically doomed to collapse.
Hello. I didn't know I was watching Potholer 54 right now.
Yep. I'm going to probably butcher some of this. The Labrador Irminga Seas SPG convection is going to collapse soon. Is about to collapse as well, thanks to climate change. Where was it? What did I list here? Did I list it here? Yeah. Oh yeah, with the end of the Greenland ice sheet. This one could be thing for you since you're on the Atlantic side. You heard of the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation?
Which provides warm waters to Europe.
Yep. Prepare for that to potentially shut down before the end of the century.
That would probably affect them more than it probably would affect us.
Yeah, Europe would. That would render places like that would turn places like
Europe,
parts of the UK,
Europe very
Northern
cold.
Europe, and Scandinavia. Make them look like Russia, like the Russian, like Siberia.
So think about that,
when
guys.
That shuts down.
It could cause global cooling in parts of Europe, which is quite astonishing.
Yeah, serious regional cooling. They're talking potentially regionally 4 to 10 degrees drop.
The Amazon.
Yep, the death of the Amazon. The Amazon's if we get to 2 degrees warming, the Amazon rainforest will be completely destroyed, which is really bad.
Yes, because for all of you don't know, Amazon. I think we covered this when we covered the Brazil fires too, like a few months before Australia. For all of you don't know, the Amazon is a massive carbon sink. They hold up like
not anymore. Not anymore. It's now a net emitter, thanks to the damage already been done. And remember, once one tipping point is hit, cascades into others. And that could pull a place like that could knock out the over circulation, the end of the Amazon rainforest, the end. That potentially could also, if it gets bad enough, part of the East Antarctic ice sheets could be start collapsing as well. Boreal permafrost, that one is really dangerous if that goes. because that's got a ton of methane in it.
Yeah, and methane's more potent of a CO2 than like oil, gas, and all that. It's way worse.
Yeah, that would be more a short-term like jump, but remember that breaks down into carbon dioxide as well. So so you get that. So long-term, it might not have a big effect, but it'd be a big spike short-term. And
this is all not good, people.
And that could not damage something. That could cause damage to something like the East Antarctic ice sheet. It wouldn't last long enough for that to collapse, unless we were really irresponsible. Because that would require, that's a high one, along with the total end of Arctic winter sea ice, Arctic sea ice.
Yep, and open up the Northern Passage, which everyone's so obsessed about for centuries. Big deal.
Yep.
But yeah,
big fucking deal. Yeah.
And here's another thing too people need to consider. There's two other things that climate change also causes too. One, refugees, especially if it gets so hot in the Middle East that people have to leave. Which, by the way, your article I think mentioned that too.
Yeah,
becoming too hot.
The wet bulbs.
Yeah. So yeah, that would mean people have to leave places because they're too hot. Which, of course, the conservatives are going to have a meltdown by having refugees escaping climate change, because they're a bunch of racists.
They'll be flooding they're expecting the next 5 years it to get so hot in India that it triggers a wet bulb event. To get the stuff.
And for all of you who don't know, at that point, it's so hot that you can't be outside. You have to be inside air conditioned such.
Yep.
And of course, India, unlike us, where we're developed, we have air conditioning. We could just stay inside and get water, no problem. They can't do that. They don't have the same economic luxury like we do. So that's dangerous.
That wet bulb temperature hitting about 35 degrees.
It was like 90 degrees and 90% humidity.
Yep. No amounts of sweating or adaptive behavior will lower your body temperature.
Yep. And it will kill you.
And I don't know the exact number they mentioned, but it was something like about half. It was something like potentially as little as 30 minutes.
Another thing too is it can also increase diseases showing up because for all of you who don't know, not only about the permafrost like in Siberia melting would be bad for climate change, but there also is a lot of like extinct diseases that are in there too that could come back. Like I think there was even one disease that they found that we've already eradicated that's in there too. Can't remember which one, but that's also something else that's not good. And then
here we go. Vulnerable areas, South Asia, so places like India, Bangladesh, and that, which have huge populations.
Yep, India is the second most populated country. And also, India is supposed to become the most populated country in the world in like in a few years because China's slowing down growth.
Already has.
Oh, India finally overtook them?
Recently overtook. India recently overtook China. Overtook in April.
Well, there you go. After hundreds of years, thousands of years or so, looks like India's now the most populated country in the world. Good for them, I guess, as China's probably mauled in.
Yes. The Persian Gulf and the Red Sea by 2050 will be
basically the Arabian Peninsula.
Bye Arabia. Yep. So Arabian Peninsula, Iranian Peninsula, and India will be uninhabitable by 2050 for big chunks of the year, and that will extend to eastern China, parts of Southeast Asia. And Brazil by 2070.
Yep, because if the Amazon went away, it would become like a massive hot savanna, like parts of Africa.
Yep. Which would then and combine that would mean there'd be big wet bulb conditions in Brazil, which would make that whole part of South America uninhabitable.
It seems like things like climate change would actually maybe somewhat help Africa though, in terms of like changing like the savanna, the Sahara Desert to like somewhat green.
Even better. Guess where else parts of other parts of what countries could become uninhabitable before the end of the century?
Parts of America?
Yep. Arkansas, Missouri, and Iowa will likely hit that critical wet bulb temperature limit before the end of the century. Northern Australia, so places like Cairns, Darwin, and Broome and that will be uninhabitable.
Tropical part, because that's where the humidity comes in, because the deserts don't have humidity, remember, so...
Yep.
But the tropics will have the humidity and the heat.
Yep. So things like that. And And of course, you'd go in there. If that keeps getting worse and worse and worse, that's going to get further and further out. Potentially, I'd put it at this point that unless we do drastic action, humanity has only a 50-50 chance of about a 50-50 chance of avoiding extinction.
Better hope we get off the planet
How
soon.
ironic would that be if the climate change that humanity causes wipes humanity out?
No surprise.
And don't forget, and though this is very unlikely, with even a moist greenhouse being would be almost impossible to trigger, Venus wasn't always the 465 degrees C hellhole that it is today.
Mm-hmm. And that would potentially happen too as the sun gets warmer, gets brighter.
Yeah,
that's billions of years.
A moist greenhouse would be triggered in about 1 billion years when the sun's about 10% brighter.
Yeah.
But hey, as I said, anthropogenic climate change, probably not.
Either way, it's still not good.
Able to get to that level.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of hurricane intensity, I remember the second episode of Loki. Do you know the part where they were talking about the anomaly hiding in a catastrophe event?
What?
Oh, where it was a superstore in Alabama in the year 2050. Going to a superstore there. They actually were sorting refuge from a hurricane category 8.
Yeah, because another thing too I've read about hurricanes, I think I told about this before, there's like weird things when it comes to like climate change with hurricanes where it would make them like more frequent, more stronger and stuff like that, but I've also read that if more hurricanes form and stuff, it would churn the oceans or like change like the temperature, like bring in the cold water up sometimes, where it actually could possibly make less hurricanes likely to form, but make them stronger overall. So like I've seen like conflicting things on it, so I don't know what to say about that.
Yeah, there's some complex biochemistry, atmospheric and sea ocean interactions.
Because hurricanes are very sensitive. They need just the right things to be strong. But yeah, we've been talking about El Nino so much, we didn't even talk about the other thing that needed to be brought up, because originally we were going to just talk about the El Nino, but something else recently happened. Massive wildfires in Canada, and as you see in the picture, the storm, the smoke cloud actually...
Far-right nutjobs.
What?
Yep. A few of those were arson by far-right fucktards. But of course, every single time there's a fire, all your far-right nuts are like, all wildfires are triggered by climate change activists. They literally believe that.
Because they're retarded. But yeah, guys, Canada had a massive wildfires on the East Coast this time instead of the West Coast where it normally happened. And it got bad enough that, just like you had to probably deal with a few years ago, the Atlantic East Coast had to have massive smoke clouds. As you see this picture from New York City a week ago. Now, we actually had something like...
We had that in Australia. There were parts where they actually said you had to wear... Where I actually had to wear a mask when I went out.
Yeah,
this was just so bad.
Yeah, this was the first experience for me seeing something like this, because fires like this are like non-existent really on America's East Coast, because we're always wet and all that. But this didn't get this bad down here where I'm at. It was like a hazy in the morning, but that was it. It was pretty much still fine. But man, New York City and such, they got walloped bad. And that stuff, when you see stuff like that, you need to stay inside. Just like it's too hot when the wet bulb fear, you stay inside. You have to stay inside for this, because this will kill you. It's poisonous to breathe. And unfortunately, this is going to be quite a common occurrence, because climate change makes forest fires more frequent and all that.
They are,
and honestly, forest fires, depending on how bad they are, especially for you guys down there years ago, they could really, really speed up climate change. Because man, I remember we read it too. I think your forest fire thing 4 years ago, if it was like at least between 300 to 350 million tons of CO2, which is humongous. Oh my goodness, I might even see if I could look that up on Wikipedia. Here we go. Because it was it's ridiculous amount. Let's see if I could find that again. Wikipedia, why you gotta be stubborn? But yeah, this is pretty scary and all that, and it must be a challenge and all that. And of course, you won't show me the actual forest fire; it just shows your entire season, which is really annoying.
Yep.
Fucking God, I want to rate up that big one. But yeah, that is huge. I'm trying to find, like, 350 million tons is huge. But I'm trying to figure out, like, how big is it, like, in comparison to, like, a country? Because that was, like, equivalent to, like, a country's entire emissions in a year, basically, that did. Like, it was a huge amount. But yeah, all scary stuff, people. So expect... Well, like I said, on the East Coast, maybe we'll be lucky the next few years, and maybe we'll have less hurricanes for a little bit, because we've had a lot of hurricanes the last few years because of La Nina or whatever. Since I'm such an idiot, can't pronounce it for shit.
La Nina.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll get a little bit of a break of it, but unfortunately, it just sucks that you all on the other side of the world have to deal with the negative effects for once.
Yep.
Because I'm sure under La Nina, you guys had cooler temperatures, didn't you?
Yeah, we did.
And wetter too, which probably helped your forest fires too, wasn't it?
Yeah, we didn't have anywhere near the fires we had in 2019, 2020.
Yeah. It's just the unfortunate thing that Earth does. And of course, we make it worse because, guess what, guys? Climate change is a thing. It's real, and we caused it, and we must fix it. And which is why we must get Republicans, conservatives out of government so they can't implement... I mean, so we can actually implement positive change for once.
And just completely obliterate most corporations.
Yep, and heavily regulated.
And probably also killing a lot of and probably killing a lot of them as well.
Because I think we covered too. It was like 10 corporations, I think, in America produce like 70% of most of the emissions.
Yep.
So yeah, regulating them would have massive impacts. We even covered that too, like what causes the most CO2. Like a year or so ago. Man, we need to cover that again.
Literally half the military.
Yeah, America's military is a big emitter too.
And you save 5% on America's greenhouse gas emissions.
Yep, that's why we need to cut back on military defense spending, and Europe should focus on theirs instead, in case if Russia decides to get more upbeat towards them and put that money towards helping combat climate change. So yeah, very unfortunate, very scary things, but it must be covered regardless of how we feel. But hopefully we can combat, well, we have to, but of course you conservatives have to get out of the way. Alright, so I think that's finally enough, as we've covered for 2 hours now. So, see you guys next time for episode 79.